Welcome to the Newsa-Cast YouTube channel. These Red Smith Banquet throwbacks are exclusive interviews of sports legends, powerful media personalities, and influential coaches. You won't find these anywhere else. Subscribe below and enjoy. Lundquist, Tosh, 2003. He was the featured speaker at the Radisson Paper Valley Hotel. You'll see Chuck Kunitz was the master of ceremonies. He introduced Verne Lundquist, and you and I thought it was pretty appropriate here to have Verne, being that he just called his last Masters earlier this past week, or this past Sunday. And yeah, he talks a little bit about the Masters in his speech.
Fantastic. Yes, great interview. Hope you enjoy it.
When you think of our main speaker tonight, versatility has to be a word that's used. Our guest speaker tonight is by far one of the most versatile play-by-play broadcasters in the business. Verne Lundquist has done play-by-play for figure skating at the 92, 94, 98 Olympics, NFL, NBA, college basketball, including the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, several golf events, including the Masters, worked on networks, NFL broadcasts, spent 8 years at ABC Sports and 3 years as play-by-play announcer for TNT's NFL, NBA, golf, and figure skating coverage, 95 to 97. In 98, Verne returned to CBS after having previously worked for CBS television network 82 to 95, and serves as lead play-by-play announcer for network coverage of college football. When you think of golf and you think of the Masters, 17th hole, Jack Nicholson, Jack. Jack's got a tough putt. He makes it, he holds the putt up, and the announcer says, "Yes, sir." And if you ever watch the commercials on the Masters, that's our buddy here making that "yes, sir" announcement. Verne was born in Duluth, Minnesota. He grew up in Texas, and for a long time was the radio voice of the Dallas Cowboys, 72 to 84. Is it something I said? More importantly, though, Verne recently did the Wells Fargo Sun Bowl from El Paso. And a lot of you don't realize this, but he demonstrated great hands and almost blazing speed in the football game the day before the Sun Bowl. He still got it, guys. Please welcome Verne Lundquist. Verne.
Thank you, Chuck. It is a real pleasure to be in Appleton. I've been in this town many, many times, and in this hotel many, many times, but always when we were doing a Packer game on television, and of course the visiting teams stayed here tonight. It's a pleasure to be back in a more official function. I'm reminded a little bit about a game I did back in the late 70s. I was at ABC. And we were doing a game in Logan, Utah. This was Brigham Young University against Utah State, where Merlin Olsen played his college football. And it was a BYU team that was undefeated at the time. They'd won 5 in a row against a Utah State team that came into the game at 4-1. Lavelle Edwards at BYU had a sensational team. Some of you might remember Gifford Nielsen, who played with the Houston Oilers. He was the starting quarterback. The second string quarterback on that team was Mark Wilson, who later played with the Raiders. And they had a redshirt freshman named Jim McMahon. The tight end was a guy named Todd Christensen. So we go into Logan, Utah, and it's a gorgeous city, a beautiful October day in the Cache Valley, and we were expecting a real tight ball game. Well, BYU just exploded, and Gifford Nielsen threw for 4 or 5 touchdowns in the first half. They were up by about 35 points at halftime. Mark Wilson came in the third quarter. I remember distinctly he went 8 of 9. And the game dragged on and on and on. And what had been a sellout crowd had headed for the exits. and the sun is going down. We've been on the air for 4 hours, and our director, Joe Assetti, was looking desperately for any kind of a shot to kind of demonstrate what was going on. And he found a lady sitting alone in the end zone, an elderly lady, appeared to be about in her 70s, all by herself, the chill coming in. She had a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. She was hunched together like this, lines really etched deep in her forehead. And I was searching for something to say. Joe said he put his key down to me and said, "She was a freshman when the game started." I want to thank Chuck for getting my name right. I'm sure Jack Nicholson will appreciate it.
That's who that was.
It's all about Schmidt, Chuck. I do recall back in the 70s, I noticed in the bio, and we do sneak a peek at those periodically, that reference was made that while I was at Channel 8 in Dallas, I was lucky enough to be selected Sportscaster of the Year for the state of Texas, and it was really a wonderful honor. And they had the National Sportscasters, Writers and Broadcasters Association has this affair in Salisbury, North Carolina. And they invite all of the 50 winners back to this little banquet, and a writer from each state and a broadcaster from each state. And this was the first time I had won, and I was really, really pumped about going back. The late Jack Buck, who was one of the guys that I so hope to emulate, was there as the winner from Missouri. Well, it came time for the introductions, and they were doing it alphabetically by state. So guess what? I'm Texas. I remember I was right behind John Ward of Tennessee. And the MC that night was a fellow who was obviously emceeing a banquet for the first time, and he was really nervous. Now, he was the public address announcer at the local NASCAR track, and he was a large man, and he was perspiring profusely. And he came back to check with me before the introductions. He said, "Let me just get it straight. It's Verne Lundquist." And I said, "No, Verne Lundquist." He said, "Okay." He walked away, came back. He said, "The television station in Dallas." I said, "It's real easy. It's WFAA." He says, "Got it." Van Lundquist. I said, "No, Verne Lundquist." So he starts with Arkansas and Alabama, and he works his way down. He introduces John Ward from Tennessee, and he gets to my little notch in the program. And he said, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, the winner from the state of Texas, from WFFA, here's Verne Ludacris." Not that tough a name. Congratulations to all of you who won the awards tonight, and what a pleasure it is to share the dais with men of such distinction. Pat Richter and I go back a few years, and Eric, congratulations to you on the great season. Do we not all understand why Brooks Robinson is Mr. Nice Guy? And I think you also understand why those of us in my end of the business, when we came into Green Bay to do a game, would talk to the PR staff, Lee Remmel or Jeff Blum, and say, "Line up Leroy Butler, please." Because it was constant that we would see, "Good to see you again." I did notice a small scattering of boos at the mention of the Dallas Cowboys. Larger now. I actually was at the Ice Bowl game. That was my first year in Dallas. I had come to work at Channel 8, the ABC affiliate in Dallas, in 1967, and was asked, and what a great honor it was, to do the pre and the post-game show on the Cowboy Radio Network. By the way, the most overrated ride in all of America is on John Madden's bus. He's got a lot of idiosyncrasies. One of them is, that he keeps the bus at a constant 55 degrees. It is meat locker cold. John also is a little claustrophobic, doesn't like to tie his shoes, wears tennis shoes, but he is obviously one of the great characters in the sport and one of the great broadcasters. I'm one more, and we'll everybody say goodnight and go home. But Brooks really caught my attention when he was talking about trying to maintain humility and a sense of perspective. These great athletes really know what the spotlight is like, and to a degree, those of us who are in television and in broadcasting do as well. You're on the air and you're in people's homes, and you hope that there's a familiarity that comes into play. But I was reminded of a story that happened that gave me a sense of perspective in 1975. I did a show in Dallas-Fort Worth for 2 years. I'm not ashamed to admit it now. I was for a long time. It was a game show, and it was called Bowling for Dollars. It was franchised around the country, so it was probably in Milwaukee. I know it was in Boston, may have been in Baltimore. When they came to me and asked me to do this, I said, I'm not going to do that. After all, I'm a dignified broadcaster. And they said, listen, call Los Angeles and talk to Chick Hearn. He does the show in L.A., so I called his office, the late Chick Hearn, the Laker broadcaster who just died. And I called him, Mr. Hearn. I introduced myself. I'm in Dallas. They've asked me to do the game show. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, tell me. He said, oh, it's great. He says, we run it 7 to 7:30, 5 nights a week. And we beat the Cronkite Show. We beat Huntley Brinkley. We beat ABC News. And I said, but you're the voice of the Los Angeles Lakers. Aren't you worried about your reputation? He said, son, understand one thing. Anybody who watches this show doesn't know that I do the Los Angeles Lakers. So I did the show for 2 years in Dallas. And at the end of the first year, I got a call from ABC, and they said, we have your Thanksgiving assignment, and you're going to get to do your first national telecast. It's Texas at Texas A&M. I lived in Texas for most of 20, 30 years, and it was just a wonderful assignment for me. The number 2 Aggies against the number 5 Longhorns, undefeated Texas A&M, once beaten Texas. My partner for that broadcast was Frank Broyles. It was his first telecast ever. Went down to Texas A&M. We did the game. Aggies won it 20-10, and I am on an insufferable ego trip when the thing is over. And my buddy Joe Cash and I were going to drive back to Dallas. We get in the car, Joe's driving. You remember those ugly old yellow ABC jackets that Al and John wore one night earlier on their 500th? Well, I had one of those on. So, Joe, can you imagine 20 million people watching this? Yeah. I said, no, think about it. I mean, people in Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine, yeah. So I go on in this vein, and we pull into a gas station in Fairfield, Texas. He gets out, goes in. The guy's filling up and washing the windshield, and he looked in, and I could tell there was a slight hint of recognition. But he didn't really seem to be sure, so I thought I'd turn and make sure he could see that ABC patch right there, right? He's going to say something nice about the game. And he rubbed the windshield, and he looked inside, and then he turned over his shoulder and yelled at his partner, Rudy, God Almighty, get out here. It's the Bowling for Dollars dude on the TV.
Please subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when we post another great episode or interview. Download the podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your support.